I was supposed to pick up my son at the airport at 3 p.m. His flight from Seattle was on time, and I'd gotten there early like I always do. I parked in the cell phone lot and waited for his text that he'd landed. When it came, I drove around to arrivals and looked for him at our usual spot, right by door B4. That's where I always picked him up when he came home to visit. But he wasn't there. I circled around again, slower this time, scanning the crowd. And that's when I saw him. My son David was sitting on the curb near door C7, hunched over a duffel bag that looked like it had seen better days. He was wearing a gray hoodie I'd never seen before and jeans that were too big for him. His head was down, and even from the car, I could tell something was very, very wrong. I pulled over immediately, threw the car in park, and got out. "David?" He looked up, and my heart broke. His eyes were red, and he had dark circles under them like he hadn't slept in days. This was my son, who used to be so strong, so confident, a firefighter, someone who ran into burning buildings while others ran out. "Hey, Mom." His voice was flat. I walked over to him. "Sweetheart, what are you doing over here?" "I was waiting at B4. "I know, He trailed off, staring at the pavement. That's when I noticed what he didn't have. "Where's your truck? I thought you were driving down and I was just meeting you here to follow you home." My son had always been so proud of that truck, a 2019 Ford F-150 navy blue that he'd saved up for years to buy. He'd driven it across the country when he moved to Seattle for a transfer to a different fire station 3 years ago. David looked away. Ashley and her dad took it. I stood there for a moment, not sure I'd heard him right. "What do you mean, took it?" "They sold it. Last month." "They sold your truck?" "Your name is on the title." Her dad forged my signature at the dealership. I didn't even know until it was gone. I felt my blood pressure rising, but I kept my voice calm. "Get in the car." David picked up his duffel bag, the only thing he seemed to have with him, and got into my passenger seat. I pulled away from the curb and merged into traffic, my mind racing. My son had married Ashley 4 years ago. She was a dental hygienist, seemed nice enough, though I always felt she was a bit controlling. Her father, Frank, was a retired contractor who inserted himself into every aspect of their lives. I'd tried to like him, but there was something about the way he talked to David that bothered me. Always subtle digs, always making my son feel smaller. I didn't say anything until we were on the highway heading home. Then I asked the question I was afraid to hear the answer to. "David, what's going on?" He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window. Finally, he spoke. "It started after the accident. 14 months ago, David had been injured in the line of duty. A roof collapsed during a warehouse fire. He'd pulled 2 people out before a beam came down on his shoulder and back. He'd needed surgery, months of physical therapy. He was on medical leave, collecting disability and workers' comp. The injury settlement came through 10 months ago," he said quietly. $180,000. I glanced over at him. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. That money will help you and Ashley." "It's gone, Mom, all of it." I almost swerved into the next lane. "What?" Ashley had me sign papers when I was still on pain medication after the surgery. She said they were insurance forms. They weren't. She got power of attorney. She and Frank moved all the money into accounts I can't access. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "David, that's illegal. That's fraud." "I know, but every time I tried to confront her about it, He stopped. "She'd what?" "She'd threatened to take Jake away from me. She said I was mentally unstable from the injury, that I was on too many pain medications, that she'd get full custody and I'd never see my son again. Jake. My 7-year-old grandson, a sweet, smart kid who loved dinosaurs and building things with Legos. The thought of him being used as a weapon made me furious. "Where is Jake now?" I asked. "With them. Ashley wouldn't let me bring him. She said I was going to visit my mother to clear my head and that Jake needed stability." We drove in silence for a few minutes. I was trying to process everything. My son, my strong, capable son who saved lives for a living, had been systematically abused and robbed by his own wife and father-in-law. "What about the cabin?" I asked carefully. David's late mother, my first wife Sarah, had left him a cabin in the mountains when she passed away 8 years ago. It was a beautiful place, rustic but well-maintained, worth at least $400,000. Sarah had inherited it from her parents, and she'd wanted David to have it. David's jaw clenched. Frank told me the property taxes were overdue. He said he'd take care of it as a favor. He had me sign what he said was a tax payment authorization form. Let me guess. It wasn't. It was a quitclaim deed. He transferred the cabin into his and Ashley's names. They've been renting it out on Airbnb for the past 6 months. I found out when one of the renters called me because there was a problem with the water heater and my number was still listed as the emergency contact on the old property documents. I had to pull over. I literally had to pull onto the shoulder of the highway because I was shaking so badly I couldn't drive safely. I turned to my son. "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me any of this was happening?" David's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm supposed to be the strong one, Mom. I'm a firefighter. I run into danger. I save people. How could I admit that I couldn't even protect myself in my own home? How could I tell you that I let my wife and her father steal everything from me?" I reached over and grabbed his hand. "Listen to me. What they did to you is not your fault. They manipulated you when you were vulnerable. They lied to you. They committed crimes against you. None of that is because you're weak. It's because they're criminals." He wiped his eyes with his free hand. "I don't even know where to start, Mom. I have no money, no truck, no home. Ashley froze our joint bank account. She canceled my credit cards. I couldn't even afford the flight down here. I had to use my old rewards miles." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He'd lost weight. His clothes hung off him. He looked defeated in a way I'd never seen before. "You're coming home," I said firmly. "You're staying with me, and we're going to fix this." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will." I pulled back onto the highway and drove us home. When we got to my house, I made David take a shower and put on some clean clothes. I'd kept some of his old things from when he lived with me before he got married. They fit him better than what he'd been wearing. While he was in the shower, I made phone calls. First, I called my attorney, Patricia Rodriguez. I'd used her for my estate planning, and I knew she had connections with lawyers who specialized in family law and fraud cases. "Patricia, I need help. It's my son." I explained everything David had told me. Patricia listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she was silent for a moment. "Margaret, what they've done is textbook financial abuse combined with elder fraud tactics, except they're using it on a younger person who was vulnerable due to injury. The power of attorney signed under duress, the forged signature on the truck title, the quitclaim deed obtained through deception. These are all actionable. Can we prove it? We'll need documentation. Medical records showing he was on pain medication when he signed the power of attorney. The dealership records for the truck sale. The quitclaim deed filing. His injury settlement paperwork. Does he have any of that? I'll find out." When David came out of the shower, looking more like himself in a clean t-shirt and jeans, I sat him down at the kitchen table. "We're going to build a case," I told him. "But I need you to tell me everything, and I need you to help me gather every piece of paper, every email, every text message that can help us prove what they did." Over the next 3 days, David and I worked together. He logged into email accounts Ashley didn't know he had access to. We found the power of attorney document, and sure enough, the date on it was 2 days after his surgery, when he'd still been on heavy pain medication. We requested his medical records from the hospital, which clearly showed the medications and dosages he'd been prescribed. We drove to the dealership where David's truck had been sold. The sales manager remembered the transaction because Frank had been pushy and aggressive. When I asked to see the paperwork, the manager pulled it up. The signature wasn't even close to David's real signature. "I want to file a police report," I said. The manager looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, that sale was completed 6 weeks ago. The truck is long gone. I don't care if it's in Alaska by now. This is fraud, and I want it documented." We filed a police report that afternoon. The officer who took the report was sympathetic, especially when he learned David was a firefighter. Next, we pulled the property records for the cabin. The quitclaim deed had been filed 8 months ago. I called the county recorder's office and requested a copy of the notarized document. When it arrived, I looked at the notary's signature and seal. Then I did something that probably wasn't entirely legal, but I didn't care. I looked up the notary's public license number and called them directly. "Hello, this is Margaret Chen. I'm calling to verify a notarization you performed on a quitclaim deed 8 months ago." I gave them the document number. There was typing on the other end of the line. "Ma'am, I have no record of notarizing that document. Can you tell me the date?" I told them. I wasn't even working that day. I was on vacation in Florida. My stamp was in my locked office drawer. "So this notarization is fraudulent?" "It appears to be. I need to report this. Someone used my stamp without authorization, which is a felony." We filed another police report. Patricia worked fast. Within a week, she'd filed for an emergency hearing regarding the power of attorney, claiming it was obtained under duress and without proper informed consent. She also filed motions to freeze the assets that had been taken from David's settlement and to investigate the property transfer. But the thing that worried me most wasn't the money or the property. It was Jake. David talked to his son every night on video calls, and every night my grandson looked more confused and withdrawn. Ashley was clearly telling him things about his father, painting David as unstable or unreliable. "She's turning him against me," David said one night after a particularly short call where Jake had barely spoken. "No," I said firmly. "She's trying to, but kids are smarter than we think. Jake knows who you are. He knows you love him." But I was worried too. 2 weeks after David came home, we got the break we needed. Patricia called me, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. "Margaret, I need David to come to my office tomorrow morning. I have someone he needs to meet." The next day, David and I went to Patricia's office. Waiting there was a woman in her 40s who introduced herself as Dr. Elena Vasquez, a forensic psychologist. "Mr. Chen," she said, shaking David's hand, "your attorney has asked me to review the circumstances under which you signed various legal documents. I specialize in cases involving coercion, duress, and diminished capacity." Over the next 3 hours, Dr. Vasquez interviewed David. She reviewed his medical records, the timeline of events, and the documents he'd signed. She asked detailed questions about his mental state, his pain levels, and what Ashley and Frank had told him when presenting the documents. When she was finished, she turned to Patricia. "This is one of the clearest cases of financial abuse I've seen. The power of attorney is absolutely invalid. He was on medications that specifically carry warnings about impaired judgment and decision-making. No reasonable person would consider him capable of informed consent at that time." Patricia smiled. "Can you put that in a written report?" "I'll have it to you by end of week." Things moved quickly after that. The police investigation into the forged truck sale led to the dealership's security cameras. The footage showed Frank signing paperwork, not David. Frank was arrested and charged with forgery and fraud. The fraudulent notarization on the quitclaim deed led to an investigation of Frank's contracting business. Turns out, he'd been using that same notary's stolen stamp for years on various documents. More charges. Ashley, panicking as her father faced serious criminal charges, made a crucial mistake. She sent David a long, angry email detailing how everything they'd done had been for Jake's future and how David was too stupid and weak to manage money anyway. She listed every account where the settlement money had been moved, every lie she'd told, every manipulation. She'd basically written a confession and emailed it to him. Patricia filed for emergency custody based on parental alienation and Ashley's admission of financial crimes. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen cases like this before, granted David temporary custody while the criminal cases proceeded. The day I drove David to Seattle to pick up Jake was one of the best days of my life. Ashley was required to have Jake ready at a neutral location, a police station parking lot. When we pulled up, I could see my grandson standing next to his mother, holding a small backpack. David got out of the car slowly. "Hey, buddy." Jake looked uncertain for a moment, glancing up at his mother. Then he looked back at David, and something in his face changed. He dropped his backpack and ran. "Daddy!" David caught him and lifted him up, holding him tight. Jake wrapped his arms around his father's neck and started crying. "I missed you, Daddy. I missed you so much." "I missed you too, Jake, so much." Ashley stood there, her face unreadable. A police officer was present to supervise the exchange, and she didn't say a word. David carried Jake to the car and buckled him into the booster seat I'd installed in the back. As we drove away, Jake started talking nonstop, telling us about school, about his friends, about the new Lego set he'd gotten. He didn't ask why he wasn't going back to his mother's house. He seemed just relieved to be with his dad. The legal process took another 2 months. Frank pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and forgery. Because of his age and the fact that he agreed to make full restitution, he avoided prison but got 5 years of probation and a felony record. His contracting license was revoked. Ashley, facing HIPAA violation charges for accessing and misusing David's medical records to build a false case of mental instability, as well as being complicit in the financial crimes, agreed to a settlement. The terms were simple: full restitution of all settlement money, totaling $180,000 plus interest. Transfer of the cabin back to David's name, free and clear. David's truck, which had been located in Oregon, was returned with Ashley paying all costs. Ashley agreed to a divorce with David getting primary custody of Jake. She would get supervised visitation, with the possibility of unsupervised visits only after completing parenting classes and therapy. She also had to surrender her dental hygienist license for 2 years, pending a board review for the HIPAA violations. The day the settlement was finalized, David and I sat in Patricia's office, and I watched my son sign his name to document after document. His real signature, not forged. When it was done, Patricia shook David's hand. "Mr. Chen, you did the right thing coming forward. I know it wasn't easy." David nodded. "I couldn't have done it without my mom." I felt my eyes getting misty, but I blinked the tears back. 3 months later, David, Jake, and I drove up to the cabin for the first time since David had gotten it back. The renters Ashley and Frank had placed there had been evicted, and the place had been cleaned and restored. Jake ran through the rooms, exploring, his voice echoing off the log walls. "Grandma, can we come here all the time?" "As often as you want, sweetheart." David stood on the porch, looking out at the mountains. I came and stood next to him. "Your mother would be proud of you," I said quietly. He nodded, not speaking. "I'm proud of you too. It takes real strength to admit when you need help. I should have told you sooner. Maybe, but you told me when you were ready, and that's what matters." David turned to me. "Mom, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. That's what family does. We protect each other." Jake came running out onto the porch. "Dad, Grandma, come look! There's a deer outside the kitchen window." We followed him inside, and sure enough, a doe was grazing just beyond the tree line, her white tail flicking. Jake pressed his face against the window. "Can we stay here tonight?" David looked at me, and I nodded. "I think we can arrange that." That night, after Jake was asleep in one of the bedrooms, David and I sat by the fireplace. The cabin was quiet except for the crackling of the fire and the sound of the wind in the pines outside. "I went back to the fire station last week," David said, "for a visit. The guys want me back as soon as I'm cleared medically. How do you feel about that?" "Nervous, but good. I've been doing physical therapy, and the doctor thinks I'll be cleared in another month or 2. "That's wonderful. I've been thinking about moving back down here. Jake loves his school in Seattle, but I don't know. Being close to you these past few months, having that support system, it's made me realize what I was missing. You know you're always welcome to come home." He smiled. "I know." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. "Mom?" he said finally. "Yes?" "When you saw me at the airport that day, sitting on the curb with nothing but that duffel bag, what did you think?" I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, I thought, someone hurt my son, and they're going to regret it. David laughed, a real, genuine laugh that I hadn't heard from him in months. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "Too late. You've been on my good side your whole life, and you're stuck there." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart." Later, after David had gone to bed, I stayed up by the fire for a while longer. I thought about that day at the airport, how broken my son had looked, how lost, and I thought about how far he'd come. The thing about being a mother is that you never stop wanting to protect your children, no matter how old they get. When they're young, you protect them from scraped knees and bullies on the playground. When they're older, you protect them from the bigger, more dangerous threats. Sometimes that means legal battles and police reports and fighting people you wish you'd never met. But you do it because that's what love means. It means showing up. It means fighting. It means never, ever giving up on the people who matter most. I looked at the flames dancing in the fireplace and thought about Sarah, my first wife, David's mother. She would have been so proud of him. Not because he went through this ordeal, but because he survived it. Because he asked for help. Because he fought for his son. And I hoped, wherever she was, she knew that I'd kept my promise to her. The promise I'd made at her funeral, standing over her grave, that I would always take care of our son. I'd kept that promise. And I always would. The fire burned low, and eventually I banked it and went to bed. Tomorrow we'd take Jake fishing in the stream behind the cabin. We'd make pancakes for breakfast and let him help flip them, even though half of them would end up misshapen and slightly burned. We'd be a family, healing and whole. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't running into a burning building. Sometimes it's sitting on a curb at an airport, defeated and broken, and admitting you need your mother. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is being the mother who shows up, who fights, who never backs down from what she knows is right. That's what family means. That's what love means. And that's a lesson worth more than all the settlement money, all the property, all the material things in the world. We had each other. We had Jake. We had this cabin in the mountains and memories yet to be made. And that was enough. That was everything.